Welcome to Once Upon a Crime. February ushers in a holiday of love, Valentine's Day. Couples mark this day by exchanging heartfelt gifts, gazing at each other over candlelight dinners, or taking a romantic trip together. Have you ever wondered what causes two people to become attracted to one another in the first place, or how they decide to enter into a romantic relationship? Most of us seek out partners who are giving, loving, and kind. So it boggles the mind that some find themselves intensely attracted to someone exhibiting the opposite of these qualities. They fall in love with the worst society has to offer: kidnappers, rapists, and serial killers. Throughout history, some of the world's most infamous serial killers have found themselves at the center of an unsettling phenomenon, gaining romantic partners even after their horrific crimes were exposed. From Ted Bundy to Richard Ramirez, these men, despite being locked away for their brutal acts, still managed to attract women willing to pledge their love and loyalty and even marry them. Over the next few episodes, we'll examine these unconventional and often baffling relationships. In this video, we'll consider the story of Doreen Lioy, who became infamous for her relationship with the Night Stalker, serial killer Richard Ramirez. Lioy would eventually marry the killer while he was on death row. Her story remains one of the most bizarre and unsettling cases of romantic obsession with the serial killer. Please take a second to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more chilling true crime stories about love, obsession, and the darker sides of humanity. This is Chapter 1 of the series, So I Married a Serial Killer, Mrs. Richard Ramirez. Doreen Lioy was the last person anyone would have expected to fall in love with a convicted serial killer. Born in 1955 and raised in a strict Catholic household in Burbank, California, Doreen was highly intelligent, soft-spoken, and deeply committed to her faith and traditional values. She didn't date, drink, smoke, or curse. And in 1985, when she first learned of Richard Ramirez, she was 25 years old and still a virgin. With a degree in English from Cal State Northridge, Doreen built a successful career as a magazine editor, most notably at Tiger Beat, a publication aimed at teens that dedicated its reporting to the celebrity teenage heartthrobs that were the objects of young girls' crushes. She was a respected journalist in the entertainment industry, even playing a role in launching actor John Stamos' career. Stamos later described Doreen as a very lonely woman and was baffled by her devotion to Ramirez, calling it horrible that she could find love in someone so monstrous. Doreen's fascination with Ramirez, who was convicted of a series of brutal murders, seemed at odds with the life she had carefully constructed. Her involvement in mainstream pop culture made her eventual marriage to one of America's most notorious killers all the more shocking. How could a woman so deeply immersed in the world of celebrity and youthful innocence pledge her heart to a man known as the Night Stalker? Ramirez committed a series of home invasions, rapes, and 13 murders in California between 1984 and 1985. During his killing spree, his victims, some of whom survived, were often attacked in their beds while they slept. They were beaten, sexually assaulted, murdered, and sometimes mutilated. Ramirez scrawled satanic symbols at some of the crime scenes. His victims ranged in age from 9 to 81. The city of Los Angeles was on high alert for the Night Stalker when he was identified by a single fingerprint left in a stolen car in August of 1985. The wanted killer was identified as Richard Ramirez, a 25-year-old from Texas. His mugshot had been plastered on television news channels and newspapers when he was spotted in an East Los Angeles neighborhood. Ramirez was chased, beaten, and restrained by the angry residents of Hubbard Street until police arrived and placed him under arrest. He was ultimately charged with 43 counts, including 13 charges of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. In 1989, Ramirez was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to death. If you'd like to hear the complete story of Richard Ramirez's life and crimes, listen to my episode, Infamous Locales, The Cecil Hotel, Part 1. I've included a link in the show notes. As horrific as Ramirez's crimes were, the 25-year-old serial killer began receiving fan mail from women all over the world immediately after he was booked into the Los Angeles County Jail. Dozens of letters arrived every day, some of which Ramirez answered. Some letter writers sent him scriptures and told him of God's redemptive love. They dedicated their efforts to saving Ramirez's soul from the devil. He trashed these letters. Others addressed the killer as if he were a child. They viewed him as a hurt and scared little boy who probably hadn't received enough love as a child. These women wanted to mother him and offered him unconditional love. Still others were curiosity seekers. They wanted to brag about their connection to the infamous serial killer, who was garnering headlines all over the world. They sought fame and perhaps monetary gain from getting close to Ramirez. They pictured themselves in the spotlight, giving interviews to journalists, presenting themselves as the person who knew the infamous killer best. Some asked Ramirez for personal items or wanted to take photos with him. They were opportunists who knew that collectors of true crime memorabilia would pay a pretty penny for a letter from the Night Stalker. Ramirez had the most contempt for these folks. These women not only sent Ramirez letters, but also requested to be on his visitors list. Ramirez had the option to meet with anyone he wanted during visiting hours. So many women lined up for visiting hours seeking to connect with Richard Ramirez that the jail relaxed its visiting policies to avoid endless court orders. Once this happened, dozens more women began arriving at the jail, hoping for a chance to spend a few minutes with the serial killer, even though he was only allowed one visitor a day, and they were often turned away. Some comments heard from the women about their infatuation with Ramirez included, quote, "He's attractive and cute. He's so dangerous. He's a turn-on." "He's forbidden fruit," another woman said. "I think he's the most attractive man I've ever seen." "He's so vulnerable, so sexy," one woman gushed, while wearing a sticker on her chest that read, "I love your smile." When he was first arrested, Ramirez shunned the spotlight. But soon, when he saw the hype surrounding his court appearances, upcoming trial, and the women clamoring to see him, he began to enjoy the attention. He had not been a ladies' man before his arrest. In fact, Ramirez had only had sex with one girl in his life who wasn't a sex worker. He briefly had a girlfriend in El Paso, Texas when he was 17, and she was 13. Ramirez had never felt attractive. He thought he was too skinny and was embarrassed about his bad teeth. He could rarely perform sexually unless it was connected with violent acts. So being called sexy and sought after now was a turn-on for Ramirez, and it boosted his confidence. He came out of his shell and affected a tough persona in front of the cameras and in the courtroom. He wore dark glasses and shouted out, "Hail Satan," in open court. He flirted with women who competed with one another for one of the coveted courtroom seats. However, he did not respond to the dozens of letters sent by women who wanted to be his pen pal. That reward he reserved for Eva. Eva, who had become a fixture in the courtroom, stood out from the crowd. Her jet black hair, parted in the middle, with her scalp dyed dark red, was striking. She wore all black clothing, which contrasted dramatically with her pale white skin and blood-red lipstick. Eva wrote love letters to Ramirez, saying she was a fellow Satanist. She described her fantasy of having sex with him, quote, "over the bloody bodies of his victims." Ramirez began relying on Eva's letters and her appearance in the courtroom as a source of support. I'll share more about Eva and the other Night Stalker groupies, including a juror who fell in love with Ramirez, in my February Case Notes episode on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/onceuponacrime to find out more and join. But Doreen Lioy's persistence and steadfast loyalty to Ramirez would eventually best out all of the others who vied for his attention. Doreen had lost her heart to Ramirez the moment she saw his mugshot on television. Television news reports showed Ramirez with his head still bandaged from the beatings he received from the angry residents who caught him vaulting fences into their yards and attempting to steal their vehicles as he tried to flee. When Doreen saw Ramirez's bandaged head and soulful eyes, she immediately fell in love with him. She was angry the residents of Hubbard Street were hailed as heroes, calling them thugs and criminals. She vowed to protect Ramirez from the, quote, unfair treatment he received from the media and the public. Doreen made it her life's mission to become Richard Ramirez's fiercest defender and his one true love. Have you ever wished you had a magic wand that you could wave and poof, you would look and feel younger again? Well, I may not have a magic wand to share with you, but I do have a recommendation for the next best thing. Collagen. Collagen has been proven to help you look and feel younger and healthier. But with so many collagen products on the market, how do you know which is the best? One of the best collagen supplements on the market is made by Ancient Nutrition. Ancient Nutrition's Multi-Collagen Advanced Lean Supplement is powered by clinically studied ingredients that promote weight loss, healthy weight management, and lean muscle building. Ancient Nutrition's Multi-Collagen Advanced Lean is delicious and easily incorporated into your daily routine. You can get it as a pill supplement or powder form and mix it into your morning coffee or favorite smoothie. I've been using Multi-Collagen Advanced Lean for several weeks now. I find it so easy to add it into my morning routine to enhance my healthy nutrition plan. One scoop contains only 60 calories and adds 14 grams of protein, vitamins, and minerals like zinc, vitamin C, chromium, and selenium. I've noticed decreased food cravings, and I can go longer between meals without snacking. I've also noticed increased energy. I'm not feeling the 2 p.m. slump anymore. Plus, Multi-Collagen Advanced Lean provides a bonus to support healthy hair, skin, nails, joints, and digestion. That's a lot of good stuff packed into one simple step of adding Ancient Nutrition to your daily routine. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/once. That's ancientnutrition.com/once for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/once. I've decided to start the new year right by prepping healthy meals each week. Putting a little time aside in my schedule to choose healthy ingredients and prepare nutritious meals has already created a positive difference in my energy and body. Using Thrive Market makes getting quality ingredients for my recipes and snacks easy, convenient, and affordable. Filling my online shopping cart with quality ingredients from Thrive Market is quick and easy. First of all, their products are 100% non-GMO and free from over 1,000 harmful ingredients. Secondly, they have great features to help you find healthy options in just a few clicks. You can search by dietary preference and your needs like dye-free snacks, high-protein meals, low-sugar and low-carb options, and more. Unlike some online shopping sites that seem overwhelming, Thrive Market helps you easily navigate their site, reorder old favorites, and discover new products, fill your cart, and check out in no time. And you know what? There's no shame in having a little indulgence now and again, a sweet snack or a decadent dessert. With the Thrive Market app Healthy Swap Scanner, you can scan any sweet treat you usually purchase, and it will suggest a healthier alternative. I'm stocked with all my favorites, Mavericks Bolt cookies and Smart Sweets candies I found using the app. I am all set for my sweet treats without the guilt. Are you ready for a junk-free start to 2025? Head to thrivemarket.com/onceuponacrime and get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's Thrive, THRIVE, market.com/onceuponacrime. thrivemarket.com/onceuponacrime for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. We're over a month into the new year. How are those weight loss goals going? Let's be honest. Losing weight can feel overwhelming and even frustrating. Weight Loss by Hers is changing the game by providing a weight loss solution that works. Hers offers a holistic weight loss program with personalized solutions, including compounded GLP-1 weekly injections, with the same active ingredients as Ozempic and Wegovy. Hers weight loss plans are affordable and shipped right to your door. And Hers customers report losing up to an average of 9 pounds in their first month. After submitting an online intake form, a licensed medical provider will determine the best plan for you. If prescribed, your program includes medication, ongoing care, and online support, all at one low cost. So if you've been struggling to lose weight, it's time you find the best option that works for you through Hers. Start your initial free online visit today at forhers.com/once. That's FORHERS.com/once for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/once. Hers weight loss is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescriptions required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased. Doreen Lioy's outrage about how Richard Ramirez was portrayed in the press drove her to defend him publicly. She began writing letters to the editor of the LA Daily News. The first letter she wrote was titled, "What Heroes?" It read, "A Daily News story on October 6 reported that the captors of the Night Stalker suspect Richard Ramirez are, quote, tired of the fuss. That makes 3 of us. The feigned modesty of the so-called heroes of Hubbard Street is equally tiresome. Heroes indeed. According to one hero, the heroic Manuel de la Torre exclaimed upon Richard's capture, quote, "Get my gun, I'll waste him right here." What makes de la Torre's brand of violence heroic, while Ramirez's alleged violence is considered satanic, end quote. Doreen believed the people who beat Ramirez should have been arrested for assault and battery. She was furious that they were given awards and praised for their actions. She ended one letter to the editor, quote, "While they and their neighbors dive for reward money, it must be remembered that Ramirez has yet to be convicted of any crime. While the minor players in this game may have had something to gain, Ramirez has lost something, his right to justice and a fair trial," end quote. She signed her letter under the assumed name Doreen Lloyd. Over the next few months, Doreen wrote dozens of letters defending Richard Ramirez. In February, she finally gathered up her nerve and sent Ramirez a Valentine's Day card with copies of all the letters she'd written to newspaper editors. Ramirez was impressed, and to Doreen's surprise, not only responded, but invited her to visit him. Excited to connect with him as soon as possible, she sent him her phone number and said he could call collect. He did so immediately, and their relationship played out through phone calls for the next several months. Their first face-to-face visit occurred shortly before jury selection for his trial began in June of 1988. Doreen would later report that the first time she saw Ramirez in person, she was so overwhelmed that she nearly fainted. They could only look at each other through thick security glass, but it was close enough for Doreen. Her first words to him were, "I love you." Richard told her he loved her too, and said he'd never had anyone protect and care for him as she had. That sealed it for Doreen. She vowed never to leave Richard's side and would upend her life to be near and support him no matter what. She believed in his complete innocence and said the police and the district attorney had, quote, railroaded him. Doreen made sure Richard had everything he needed, including clothes for court. She purchased him a shirt, tie, and a black leather jacket. She also put money in his jail commissary account so he could buy snacks. She sent him books and magazines and supplied him with paper, envelopes, and stamps so he could write to her and his family. Doreen wrote letters to Ramirez daily. She became obsessed with him, getting to the jail on visiting days at 5 a.m. to be one of the first in line. 4 days a week, she'd wait for hours outside the walls of the Los Angeles County Jail, not minding the dark or the cold. If she was lucky enough to visit him that day, as she often was, they were only allowed 20 minutes to talk, with the thick glass between them. Doreen didn't care. She was in love. She already pictured them married and having children together. She planned the wedding in her head and how she'd set up their home. She knew she could make him happy for the rest of his life. She saw all the other women who fought to spend time with him, but in her heart, Doreen knew that Richard loved only her. Quote, "I was the only one who truly cared. All the others were a bunch of freaks and weirdos who only wanted to use Richard. I didn't want anything for myself. It was only what I could do for him, how I could help him," end quote. She felt she had an advantage over the women who showed up to court with cleavage showing and wearing tight dresses and skirts to entice Ramirez. Her love was pure, unlike these other, quote, bimbos and street sluts, as Doreen called them. "I loved him so intensely it hurt," she said. "All I would think about was him day and night and day. I never thought of other men. I was a virgin, and Richard knew it, and that's why I was different. That's why he loved me." Doreen planned to save her virginity for Richard, even though she knew there was a very good chance they could never be together in that way. His case did not look good, and she lived under a cloud every day because of it. Her true love might spend the rest of his life behind bars, or receive the death sentence. But Doreen couldn't think about that. She spent her time instead analyzing every detail of the trial with Richard, applauding any small win in the courtroom to buoy his spirits, and commiserating with him about the DA who was, quote, doing a hatchet job on him in the courtroom. Doreen completely sided with Richard, agreeing that the DA was, quote, putting false witnesses on the stand and presenting lies to the jury. Ramirez had become dependent on Doreen for his material and emotional needs. He knew she would do whatever he asked without question. She formed relationships with his family members and was often the go-between for Richard and his parents and siblings. They'd come to trust Doreen after they saw her complete dedication to him. Ramirez also asked her for other favors. He wanted her to research how to get a letter to serial killer Ted Bundy. At that time, Bundy was awaiting execution on Florida's death row. Ramirez had questions for Bundy, and Doreen used the research skills she'd honed working for celebrity magazines to procure Bundy's inmate number and prison address. On September 20th, 1989, Richard Ramirez was found guilty of all 41 counts. When she heard the verdict, Doreen ran from the courtroom in tears, while Ramirez sat stoically. That evening, when his attorneys visited him in the county jail, he said he wasn't surprised at the outcome. The trial was a farce, he said. He didn't want his attorneys to put on a defense in the penalty phase. They advised him that would be a mistake. His father and family members were willing to be character witnesses for him. His defense would try to show the court that there were mitigating circumstances that may spare him from the death sentence. If they didn't at least try, they told him, "You're as good as dead, Richie," they warned. "They'll execute you for sure." "Well, then let them," he responded angrily. "Fuck them. Dying doesn't scare me. I'll be in hell with Satan. That's gotta be a better place than this. I'd rather die than live in a cage. Fuck that shit, man," Ramirez laughed. Ramirez asked his sister Ruth to get a message to their dad, Julian. "Tell him I said this is a bunch of bullshit, that I didn't kill anyone. This is all a big railroad job." Richard Ramirez was sent to San Quentin Prison's death row. Doreen quit her job at the magazine to be close to him. She moved to San Francisco and began working as a nanny. She still defended him to anyone who asked why she remained loyal to a convicted serial killer. She told reporters that they didn't understand Richard like she did. He was charming, intelligent, and kind. She repeatedly insisted that he was innocent and was only on death row because he was a victim of a corrupt justice system. Doreen was very critical of the media, which she believed unfairly portrayed him as a monster. But when pressed about the overwhelming evidence that convicted Ramirez, the forensic evidence and the eyewitness testimony of survivors, Doreen refused to concede he was a killer. With a wave of her hand, she dismissed it, saying, "None of that matters. I love him for who he is. You have to take the good with the bad when you're in love." Doreen's family, including her twin sister Denise, tried to reason with her. They warned her that she was consorting with a dangerous criminal. They didn't understand why she was throwing her life, her reputation, and her career for an unrepentant murderer. That was not how she was raised, they reminded her. She grew up Catholic and had been taught right from wrong and good from evil. Doreen refused to listen. Her sister finally severed ties with her. To have a relationship with Doreen now meant accepting a killer into the family. She was not willing to accept this. Richard Ramirez was a monster, plain and simple. Quote, "It's unfortunate that I've been linked with all of this," Denise stated. "I was taken aback. I didn't want to be part of this. It's been painful for the family. I never believed anything like this could happen." End quote. Doreen had been devoted to Richard Ramirez for nearly a decade when her dream finally became a reality. On October 3rd, 1996, Richard and Doreen took their wedding vows in a concrete day room inside San Quentin State Prison. The bride wore a $150 white ruffled wedding dress adorned with tiny iridescent pearls. Her groom was dressed in his prison-issued blue chambray shirt and denim jeans. She had purchased their wedding bands. Hers, made of gold, was engraved inside with the sentiment, "To my one and only, love Richard." His was made of platinum, because Richard said Satanists did not wear gold, and its inscription reads, "I love you forever, Doreen." Richard's sister Ruth was the matron of honor, and his brother Joseph served as best man. After a short ceremony, the newlyweds were allowed a brief kiss before Ramirez was returned to his cell. Conjugal visits were prohibited for death row inmates. Their marriage would never be consummated. Doreen issued a statement, quote, "I'm so happy, I'm so thrilled, very proud, and a little relieved that the bulk of the day is over. Hopefully, I can enjoy the rest of my day in peace with Richard's family and think about the importance of what happened here today." End quote. No one from Doreen's family attended the wedding. Psychologists who study abnormal behavior have identified several characteristics common to men and women who fall in love with violent criminals. Doreen Lioy Ramirez fits several of the criteria. She exhibited a savior complex, believing she could change or transform Ramirez by offering unconditional love and loyalty. She thought she was the only one who understood him and the only one who could save him. But save him from what? There was no need for redemption if she truly believed he was innocent. Perhaps it was his worship of the devil that he needed saving from. If so, being an example of God's love might be part of her perceived duty as a Christian. In addition, Doreen fits some of the characteristics of a love-avoidant female. Some of these women seek out romantic relationships that cannot be consummated. Love-avoidant females are described as insecure and immature women who avoid the sexual aspect of themselves and instead concoct a fantasy world of romantic, idealized love relationships. For Doreen, it was love at first sight when she first saw Ramirez's photo on the news. Rather than focus on the brutal crimes he was accused of, she saw him as an innocent, even describing him as so sweet, like a little boy. Doreen admitted that before meeting Ramirez, she wasn't interested in men or dating, but much rather preferred reading a romance novel. For her, a relationship or even a marriage devoid of sex wasn't a hardship. It was the ideal form of romantic love. It was a fairy tale, a fantasy. And in her fantasy, Ramirez wasn't a rapist who murdered and mutilated women young and old. He was her knight in shining armor. He was the man who came into her life and made her feel special. This is another aspect psychologists have identified in women who enter into romances with violent criminals. The more infamous the criminal, the more attention everyone connected with them receives. When she was nearly 30, Doreen worked for a celebrity magazine, researching and writing articles about teenage heartthrobs. At work, Doreen associated with celebrities admired for their talent, fame, and beauty. But she was just an ordinary person. Doreen would never be famous herself until she met Richard Ramirez. This is an example of hybristophilia, or what is more commonly called the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. Hybristophilia is a psychological term that describes the sexual interest and attraction towards those who commit crimes. The payoff for those who exhibit hybristophilia is the satisfaction of a craving for attention received through their connection with their criminal partner. The more infamous the partner is, the more attention they receive. Doreen began by writing letters to newspapers, identifying herself as a sympathetic supporter of one of the most feared and hated killers in modern California history. She sat front and center daily during his trial and was not shy about giving interviews and placing herself in the public eye. And of course, she became infamous as Mrs. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez had been incarcerated for over 2 decades when his DNA was matched to an additional murder. On April 10, 1984, 9-year-old Mi Linda Leung had been found murdered in the basement of a San Francisco hotel building where she resided with her family. The little girl had been raped, and evidence collected from the crime scene was preserved. In 2009, the case was reopened, and the DNA sample was run through CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. It came back as a match to DNA samples in the database collected from Richard Ramirez. Ramirez was charged with the rape and murder of the 9-year-old 25 years earlier. This may have been the straw that finally broke the camel's back for Doreen. She was already lamenting the fact that she'd never have children with her husband, who sat on death row. She'd always dreamed of being a mother, but had abandoned that dream to become Mrs. Richard Ramirez. Did she finally admit to herself that her husband was guilty, not just of crimes against women, but against a child? Was this what ultimately caused her to distance herself from Ramirez? Doreen never explained, but reports suggest that she had infrequent visits with Ramirez after 2009 and ultimately stopped contact with him altogether. In 2013, Ramirez died in prison at the age of 53 from complications of B-cell lymphoma. His wife was not present in his last days, nor had she visited Ramirez for several years before his death. After his death, Doreen disappeared from the public eye. Since she was still legally his wife, she was given his ashes. Reportedly, Ramirez wanted them shared among his family members, but Doreen kept them. They were eventually sold and later displayed at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, Nevada. As of this writing, Doreen Lioy Ramirez has not been seen publicly for several years. That will do it for this episode of Once Upon a Crime. Next week, I'll share another story of an infamous serial killer, Ted Bundy. We'll learn about how he married while on trial for multiple murders and even fathered a child while on death row. That bizarre story will drop next Monday on a new episode of Once Upon a Crime. Don't forget to check out our videos on YouTube. Subscribe to enjoy documentary-style videos of true crime stories I've shared on Once Upon a Crime. Look for Once Upon a Crime podcast on YouTube or click the link in the show notes. I'll be appearing in Albuquerque, New Mexico on March 15th at the Beyond the Crime Convention. Get your tickets now for this all-day event that brings together true crime survivors, family members of the missing, detectives, advocates, and true crime content creators and their followers who advocate for the voiceless. Go to beyondcrimeconvention.com and use our promo code BEYOND-OUAC to score tickets. And I'll see you there. Once Upon a Crime is written and produced by me, Esther Sanchez Ludlow. My executive producer is Lorena Garcia, and my researcher is Emma Battaglia. Until next time, be good to one another.